House originally passed a bill which requires ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, to divest or else face a nationwide ban in March. Anyway, they end up extending the time period they have to sell it to essentially be 1 year. There's a grace period and all that kind of stuff. So it's just like, all right, I got a year to figure out how to sell TikTok and ByteDance. And it wants people over. But the interesting thing about it is if it forces the sale, but in the original TikTok ban legislation, which, I was also opposed to, they had a law that was part of it, which would make it illegal to sell American user data to China. Okay, like TikTok has to be owned by Americans and you can't sell information to China. So they got rid of that part. So now it's just TikTok has to be sold away from the Chinese. But it's not a crime to sell American user data to China. So,
So it's pointless.
Welcome to Loaded Talk. I am the third most popular candidate to ever be. I am your Congressman Frank, and along with me, as always...
What's up, Planet Earth? I'm Bean.
Bean. Well, it's been another eventful chunk of time. We weren't here last week. We'll get to what the fine people in Washington, D.C. Ended last week with. But let's talk about something kind of specific to one fella. This is an issue going on in New York. It has to do with all of our rights and the fact that it's not just your local mayor, congressman, or the president or an agency that will step all over your rights. A lot of times when we have an interaction with the law, we interact with, police and then the court system. There's a prosecutor, there's defense, and then there's a judge. And the judge is supposed to be neutral. The judge is supposed to sit there and go, y'all make your arguments according to the law. I will interpret what the law says. And then how you two make your arguments about how the law says. And then I'll make a ruling based on impartial judgment of the law, And that, for a long time, has not happened, at least not universally. Famously in Florida, we had one of the first gun control type hearings that happened in Florida. This white guy was up defending himself, and the judge goes, I know this law. This law was never meant to be for white people. This is to keep black people from having guns, And so that was a thing. So a long time, judges go, there's laws, but then there's laws for the good people. But now, they had two tiers. And so if you're white, you had one set of laws. And if you weren't, then, there's a lot stricter laws for you. So that was very common for a long time. But it hasn't stopped. Prosecutors that become judges tend to stay prosecutors. I have a relative who is a judge, and I started looking into him a couple of years ago, and I started realizing he might not be a good judge. He might be a horrific judge. And you grow up hearing stories, and he doesn't put up with any nonsense in this courtroom. Like, oh, that's cool. It's like he finishes his docket, then he helps other judges with their dockets because he's, he doesn't BS around. He gets through the matters quickly. You go, well, that's efficiency. That sounds good. But he might be he might lean towards guilty all the time. So that is what I've seen from prosecutors turned judges is you're guilty because you're in front of them. They just need to make sure the defense stays out of the way, so the defense doesn't just do a stellar job and the prosecution doesn't just stumble all over themselves like you're guilty. All right. So to this case here, this is from from Red State. The author is Jeff Charles, who, if you don't follow him on Twitter, he's a good follow on Twitter, old Jeff Charles. New York City man convicted over gunsmithing hobby after judge says the Second Amendment doesn't exist in this courtroom. So look at this fella. Looks like a computer-loving guy taking his picture in front of a giant server rack.
Nerd.
Yeah, seriously. Come on. He's like, look, I wonder if this is his home thing or he just built it and he's so happy. Either way, nobody poses in front of a server rack that's not a nerd. Like, I think there's probably a picture of Burr somewhere in front of a server rack. Anyway, this guy had similar hobbies as old Angus. Brooklyn man has been convicted of 13 weapons charges after having been arrested and charged in 2022 for building his own firearms. Dexter Taylor's ordeal could become a landmark Second Amendment case in light of the Bruin ruling handed down in that same year. The jury, stupid jury. Juries are stupid, by the way. You know, like, I was watching, have you ever watched Kill Tony on YouTube? I'm starting to tell you about it. It's a funny stand-up thing at like Joe Rogan's club in Austin, but it's a lot of people getting up to try stand-up for the first time or, you know, biggest audience they've had, but it's like a interesting show. You do stand-up, you succeed or fail, and then they interview you for a while, and it's pretty entertaining. But this one guy was up there, and he was doing this horrible act. But one of the things he was talking about was jury duty and how he was looking for answers to something, and he couldn't get those answers because all the instructions that were being like yelled at everybody constantly was telling you how to fill out the form. Like, write your name where it says name, write your address where it says address. And so he's like, then I realized at some point these people can't figure out how to fill out their information on a form, and this is who gets to decide whether you're guilty or not. And as much as the joke did not work at all, he just seemed like he was ranting on this show. It was an interesting point that most people's jobs and like intelligence figure out how to get out of jury duty. Which we really should stop doing. I've never been asked on jury duty. I got paid $50 to do a practice jury, you know, for some case, which was cool. Need some money. Everybody was stupid in that too. I remember, I don't know, it was like one of those TV shows where you go, now hold on, we can't all say this. Because it's probably because everyone just wanted their $50 to leave. But I'm like, none of this makes sense. I was like, you're not even listening to the arguments. And I think that's probably pretty normal.
Oh, I was on a jury and was extremely frustrated with the rest of the jury.
Tell me about it.
So, yeah, I've got, called and tried to answer questions in a way that would get me out of being on jury duty. Turns out they like it. They want people that think. Yeah. They asked me what my favorite Netflix show was at the time, and I said, what's the one about the weird... Futurama. Can't remember what it's called now. It's just like different short stories about
the Black Mirror.
Black Mirror.
Yeah, okay.
And then I was like, that was probably a bad move. And sure enough, yeah. It was a bar fight where damage got done to the bar.
Yeah.
And this kid was gonna get charged for and we're looking at the footage, and the footage is from the outside, not the inside of the bar. And chair comes. He's outside the bar. Chair comes through the door from the inside.
Not guilty.
And
Glove don't fit.
Everyone's like, "Oh, looks like he's guilty." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? We don't even have." I'm like, "Where's the footage from the inside?" And they said the bar owner isn't providing that. And I'm like, "Okay, well, to me, he's not guilty then."
Not guilty. And that's the thing. We need more good people who are going to be not quick to say guilty, because I think more and more as these things go on, there is a thought you're in court, you are guilty. And like, you really have to be an outstanding defense lawyer to do something that resembles television in order to sway a jury. Like you have to have a team of writers that write something. And because, some of these lawyers' arguments are just not compelling, like you might be making a case, but you're not, you might be being correct about some laws, but you're not making a good case. You're not selling it. You got to sell this thing. All right. So back to this case. The jury found Taylor guilty of second-degree criminal possession of a loaded weapon, 4 counts of third-degree criminal possession of a weapon, 5 counts of a criminal possession of a firearm, second-degree criminal possession of 5 or more firearms, unlawful possession of pistol ammunition, violation of certificate of resignation or registration, prohibition of unfinished frames or receivers, 2 lesser charges including third-degree criminal possession of 3 or more firearms, and third-degree possession of a weapon were not voted on. Real quick, just these charges, right? These charges. I'm going to read them without all the degrees and see what they sound like. We have possession of a weapon.
Legal.
Possession of a firearm.
Legal.
Possession of 5 or more firearms. Possession of pistol ammunition. I guess he failed to register them, which more on that later, I guess. Basically possession of unfinished frames or receivers, so just gun parts.
Okay.
So like guns that have not been put together. And then the other ones weren't voted on. Possession of firearm, possession of ammo, possession of firearm, possession of gun parts.
That can happen if you're cleaning a weapon, too.
It could, yeah. Like you take it apart to clean it, now you have unfinished pieces. And that's how some of these laws actually will end up working. Is you go, well, you can't, like there's like the arm brace, right? They go, well, arm brace is legal here, but if you hold the brace up to here, now it's a rifle, and that gun is illegal. And you go, just...
Really?
Yeah, it's like, and they're trying to figure out all these different ways to, be like, I gotta stop this thing from happening. But every time they do a law, you go, well, hold on now. Is it illegal to clean my gun? Like, can I clean my... Yeah, just don't take it apart. It's like, well, how am I going to clean my gun? All right, Taylor, a 52-year-old. So look at this man. That is a grown-ass man. And a 52-year-old New York native and software engineer.
Smart.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, he's in software engineering, still at 50. I mean, the man loves his server. Discovered the world of gunsmithing years ago. He decided to take it up as a hobby and possibly turn it into a business later. However, when a joint ATF NYPD task force discovered he was legally buying parts from various companies, they opened up an investigation that led to a SWAT raid and arrest because he bought parts from multiple companies.
Legally.
Yeah, he legally purchased them, but from different companies, Charlie.
I'm trying to find out where the problem is.
They're different companies.
Okay. I don't understand this.
He paid money to different vendors for different parts, Charlie.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
How dare he?
It's probably something like the flag. Like if you buy guns from a couple different gun shops, they'll be like, oh, they're shopping around to try and get around some. It's always weird to me about that. It's like, okay, you bought 5 guns from 3 shops. And you're like, oh, well, must be something nefarious. We should investigate them. And it's just like, well, I think most everybody who's bought a firearm knows there's a federal background check that goes through that they don't really check that much, but eventually they look at things. And so they're not going to look at every background check, but if they see your name pop up a couple times, they'll get flagged. It'll take months and months and months, but I had to talk to the intelligence division of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department about one of my gun purchases, and which was a whole adventure in and of itself. Ended up actually being kind of helpful. But I also almost got into a fight with some plainclothes drug dealer looking stupid detective. So stupid, this guy. So many of them are just so stupid. Like whether it's jury or the detectives. Anyway, I'm not going to get off on that rant. All right, so this dude is currently being jailed on Rikers Island. Rikers, one of like the most infamous jails, like that's been in movies forever.
Isn't that for violent offenders?
It's for actual real, like bad people go there.
What? And I'm still trying to figure out where the gunsmithing is here. Like, to me, a definition of a gunsmith is making the parts from scratch. But
well, I mean, that's one way. But there's like you can. So he has a we'll get into it. He has a machine. So there's parts you machine, and there's parts that are already made.
Right.
And so like, and like you can build it without machining, and I don't know if that's technically gunsmithing at that point, But yeah, here we'll get to this. So he's at Rikers. So his lawyer, whose name is Venu Varghese? I don't know. He said that Taylor became fascinated by weapons science during the COVID-19 lockdowns. So when the New York government told him he couldn't go to work or leave his house, he found a hobby, which inspired him to take up his gunsmithing hobby. He ended up building, I believe it was 8 pistols and 5 or 6 rifles, AR-style rifles, then 8 or 9 Glock pistols that he built. Which there's a lot of modifications you can do with Glocks, and like with ARs too, there's lots of modifications you can do. So you can have just different setups and really customize them. And you can do there's some really neat things that you can do with some of these. And Glocks is just one of those it's such a common gun. People have done a lot with them, So there's just lots of different options you can go with. It's fun, it's just fun. All right. So in an interview prior to his conviction, Taylor. Now, this is a man, you can tell he's got something deep, nasty to hide. I found out that you can actually legally buy a receiver, and you can machine that receiver to completion. And you buy your parts, and you put them together, and you've got a pistol or a rifle. And once I saw that, I was hooked. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. This is the most cool thing you could possibly do in your machine shop.
I kind of want to hang out with this guy. He's a nerd and a machinist. That's right up my alley.
Yeah, it really is. No, he's an evil person, Charlie. All right. So since the beginning of the trial, this is where it gets even spicier. It was evident that the court would be biased against the defendant, according to his lawyer, who explained the 2 judges presided over his case before the current official, Judge Abina Darke, whatever. The judge disrupted Varghese's opening statement multiple times as he tried to set the stage for Taylor's defense. Even further, she admonished the defense to refrain from mentioning the Second Amendment during the trial, which it's in the Constitution, Charlie.
You're right.
It's like the second.
See, you're just not allowed to say it.
Well, the Constitution isn't real.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's old.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is like the Second Amendment, so it's like the second oldest.
There's something about free speech in there too, though, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that one.
Oh, okay. All right.
She told us, do not bring the Second Amendment into this courtroom. It doesn't exist here, so you can't argue the Second Amendment. This is New York. This is like beef, just talking to the kid about, some of these rap beefs going on. And it just sounds like the way one of those things is like, this is New York. It's like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, you can't walk this way. This is New York. Like, yeah, it is New York, but I can.
We don't need a passport to go to New York, right? Last I checked.
I mean, they tried to make it so you need a COVID passport.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, they did make it. That was a thing.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, man.
All right. So the lawyer said that he filed the appropriate paperwork to preserve these arguments for appeal, but that the judge rejected these arguments, and she went out of her way to limit me. So, this fella, have you ever been through an appeals process?
Nope.
Okay. So, you go through court, you make your arguments. Both sides make their arguments. Jury, judge, whoever, makes a ruling. And so then you go, I think this is messed up. So you file an appeal, you don't get to make any new arguments. You cannot present any new evidence. Okay. All you can do is highlight in the transcripts decisions the judge made and say, these are incorrect because of legal precedent or law or what have you. I mean, precedent, really. And so that's what you do. You go through and dissect it. You go, well, judge said this. The right thing to say according to law is this, and so with this, he starts talking, mentions Second Amendment. She goes, no, not Second Amendment here. And he goes, okay, well, can I preserve, for the appeals process, I want to preserve that, which I think a normal judge would be like, I don't care. It's an appeal, not my problem. The challenge with an appeal is you're saying the judge is wrong.
Right.
And you're presenting this to judges.
It's another judge looking at
normally a panel.
Okay.
And so Supreme Court, they've got 7, and then different levels. There's circuit. There's all that. But you know, you got to be careful because you're saying, "Hey, judges, I know better than this judge." You know, so you don't want to be willy nilly. You need to have good arguments. You know, and so you know, he's just like, "Hey, for when I file an appeal, because I'm gonna, let me just want to preserve this that I made the argument." And this judge is like, "No." So like trying to squash the appeal, trying to squash this dude's existence. All right, so go ahead.
Right to a fair trial.
So silly, Charlie. What do you think this is? All right, so yeah, the prosecution tried to paint Taylor as this dangerous individual who was building dangerous firearms in his dangerous basement. They didn't say that, but I felt needed it. In this vein, the prosecution objected to allowing Taylor's family in the courtroom to show support, nor did they allow his upstairs neighbor, who knew about Taylor's hobby, to testify on his behalf. Yeah, so his neighbor upstairs was like, "I know he builds guns. I'm not worried about it." And they're like, "Will you testify?" He's like, "Yeah, absolutely. Good guy, you know? Or at least, I don't care. He's not dangerous. I knew about the guns." And they're just like, "No, we object. You can't do that." All right, so the lawyer says he opens up, and he says that Mr. Taylor had a parade of horror. He was building this horrible place when they saw this horror that he was making under the noses of his neighbors because of all those guns intended to hit their targets, basically implying that he was going to do some harm with these things. When the lawyer countered this narrative during his opening statement, the judge interrupted him again. "There's no crime here. There's no allegation of violence," the lawyer recounted, saying. "I got up and said, you're going to learn what Dexter is, who he is. You're going to learn that he never fired these guns." The judge interrupted again and asked the lawyers to come to her chambers for a second time. So this dude's like, not only like, oh, they were made to hit a target, like, he didn't shoot the guns. What target? Like, he had some pistol ammo, probably for the Glock, but like, these are unfired weapons because it's such a pain to find a place to shoot a gun in New York. And this man apparently likes to obey the law. I would have fired him. You know, gone somewhere. There's woods, not in Brooklyn or wherever this guy is, but you know, you gotta, that would be the terrifying thing. That's the scary part about it. You're in Brooklyn. Let's say you're going to go to a rifle range in upstate New York or something. Like you're going to drive up to where it's a little less crazy, out of the city, where there's hunting clubs or whatever. You want to bring your guns. Well, it's like, all right, you got your building, in Brooklyn. You know, whatever it is, duplex or maybe more than that. I don't know what size this is, but you got to get those guns to your car if you have a car. Right. If not, you put them at the train. So let's just say you have a car. You got to get them into your car without the cops being called or you being arrested, and then you got to drive and not get pulled over. Because, like, I mean, I can only imagine how well it would go getting caught with a trunk load of guns in New York. Doesn't help that he's black, you know, and like even as 52-year-old or whatever, like he's a grown man that's probably not very confrontational at this point because most of us chill out as we get older, you know. And that is a scary thing. Your legal guns, you want to shoot legally somewhere, it's probably a pretty terrifying drive to get there. Well, I'll wrap this. Let's see. So afterwards, so basically the lawyer said, and this is something I was going to bring up a second ago, but the lawyer said the only chance he thought that this case had was jury nullification. Jury nullification is when the jury says, I do think that this person's guilty of this law, but I disagree that that law should exist. So like if we were on a jury, someone was arrested for possession of marijuana, possession of cocaine or something. And it's like, yeah, he possessed it, but I don't think that should be illegal. You know, it's a plant. So I say not guilty. And then, like, you just, like, sorry, not guilty. It's like, well, we couldn't come to an agreement, you know? And so, and then if you're worth your salt, you try and get a couple other jurors. And you just, hey, man, like, this is our chance to object to this law. Just nullify it. So it's something that happens. It's actually important. Another reason you should not dodge jury duty is you should go in.
I did not know this.
Yeah, and you can nullify bad laws by simply saying we will not participate with this.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a great tool of the everyday citizen that we can flex anytime we want, and we should flex it often. Mix my metaphors, flexing tools. I don't. I do that a lot. All right, so you said that was the only chance, and but the judge attempted to shut down any argument for nullification, and led the jury to believe that they would face consequences if they did not vote to convict Taylor. In reality, this is not the case. Jury nullification is not illegal, according to the lawyer. He says, I actually argued that jury nullification is allowed because there's some law from the High Court of New York that talks about lawyers who made jury nullification arguments. And basically, they said that judges shouldn't encourage it, but they can't prevent it. I actually made a pitch directly to the judge to allow me to argue during nullification. I don't know. She, of course, rejected that. He added, she basically said, you must vote guilty without saying you must vote guilty. And he characterized the judge as the most aggressive prosecutor in the room. So, he was guilty of all but 2 counts, taken into custody. Dude's mom started dying, crying. And so he was like, hey, to the lawyer, please comfort my mom. And turned around to his mother after the jury was done and said to his mom, God bless you, Mom. And so he's scheduled to be sentenced on May 13th. The judge will likely make an example out of him to send a message to others who might consider building their own firearms in New York. He could be facing 10 to 18 years in prison. 70 years old.
For building guns.
Buying it all legally. He didn't spend cash, under a bridge somewhere. He bought them with probably his credit card on the internet, clearly with the paper trail. He hasn't fired them. It looks like a couple were loaded and most weren't, There is a Give, Send, Go campaign to help with legal fees, so I do encourage people to go to Give, Send, Go and look up Dexter's case here because it is messed up. This guy's getting run out. Oh, there's old Jeff Charles there at the bottom. All right, so that is kind of a new thing. I mean, this guy's been fighting it since 2022. But, it's an interesting thing. We have a constitutional right to bear arms, theoretically. And this judge goes, not in this court, this is New York. Get out of here with your constitution. You go, all right. It's like, well, what crime is it? And it's like possession of firearms. And then when you try and go, but that's protected by the... you can't make the argument that this country was one of the founding principles this country had was that you can possess firearms for the sole point of holding back a tyrannical government. It wasn't about self-defense, and it wasn't about hunting, and it wasn't about target practicing. Those are all fine and fun and great, but the reason it's the Second Amendment is because sometimes the government gets a little uppity, and you might have to put them down. And then, the new thing that the left likes to do is scoff about, how are you going to beat the military? How are you going to do that? They're going to have, whatever the hell numbers they are, the fighter jets now. Well, of course, you go, I don't know, ask the Taliban. They did a good job. Ask the Viet Cong. I don't know. We haven't been winning a lot lately. And that is without asking military to kill their relatives. How many servicemen do you think where it's like, all right, we need you to shoot your neighbors. And I'm like, okay. Especially when it's like they're rising up against a tyrannical government who's holding everyone down. And you swear an oath to the Constitution, military, they take an oath to defend the Constitution. It's like they're violating the Constitution. I'm not saying we need to do this now or anything like that. But I'm saying that was the point of the Second Amendment and the argument that you should just not own guns because you won't be able to beat our military anyway. I find that both false and silly. It's just, it doesn't matter. It's, I'll take my chances. And if I'm going to take my chances, I'd rather take my chances armed than have no arms at all.
Yep.
No arms.
I got it.
All right. Well, it's kind of on that note. The Supreme Court will be hearing a little bit about the Biden administration's ghost gun rule. Ghost gun. Another term simply to make guns sound scary. assault rifles, you know. They go, oh, they're not cuddling rifles. These things might hurt somebody. Like, unlike, you know, good old pump action shotguns. Those don't assault you. So anyway, the Supreme Court agree. Yeah, ghost gun. They want people to think that these guns are just floating through society and that anybody can pick them up at any time and murder people and we'll never figure out who they are. They're just ghosts. They're ghosts in the ether. Really, they're
in the ether.
And really, it's like dudes with 3D printers. You know, dudes like, you know, our man serving in Rikers right now, Dexter. I mean, I don't think his are technically ghost guns because I think some of the parts do come with serial numbers. Like, I forget. Like, we should have had guests, old Angus on with all his gun law knowledge that he obeys. He obeys all those stupid laws. Like, you know how much he can make machine guns. He can make silencers. You know what? He won't just give me for free without paperwork. Or I'll pay him, but he won't do it. He won't do it. It drives me nuts. Supreme Court agreed on Monday to take up a case challenging the Biden administration's ghost gun rules, which enables gun part kits to be regulated as traditional firearms. In response to emergency applications, the justices have already stepped in twice to keep the rule in place throughout the litigation process after it was blocked by lower courts. Now the Supreme Court will take up the case Garland versus Vanderstock on its merits. That's a good name for a defendant in one about buying gun parts. Vanderstock. The ATF frames or receiver rule, approved in 2022, expands the definition of a firearm to encompass part kits that are readily convertible to functional weapons, or functional frames or receivers of weapons. Here's a nice little picture. So this is Firearms Policy Coalition. They're wonderful, worth supporting, worth following. So this right here, that little piece, that has to be considered a gun. You might notice that you don't really see like a trigger in there. That's
not a gun.
There's no barrel. There's no hammer. You know, like if you put a bullet in there, it will just fall out. You know, like that's not a gun.
That's a sub-assembly.
You put other pieces together and it becomes a gun. And like, all right. And the thing is, if you know, they go, you want to buy that, you got to have a federal background check and any gun laws in a state. Now you can't ship it. Like instead of being able to like ship this piece that's not a gun, like to your home, you'd have to like, it's a firearm. So first you got to pass the background check. Then they got to send it to the FFL shop in your area, who then checks your ID and logs the thing. And so, you know, you track it. Cause you know, right now you can order, you order a gun off of like Cheaper Than Dirt. They're not going to send it to you. They got to send it to an FFL. And so someone like old Angus. And so then, you know, he checks the ID, he writes the paperwork.
Just a third party that's official.
It's a gun shop, but you can be an FFL without a gun shop, you know. And but that person's required to keep these logs. And although the ATF's not really allowed to come and grab them whenever they want, it has been happening. Like they've been showing up at gun shops taking pictures of computer screens and trying to bully people. There's guys that just bought like three to five guns, I forget, but you know, bought a handful of guns, and then the ATF shows up at their back door, like, "Hey man, we saw that you bought a few guns." Like, "Yep." Like, "We just want to go see them, and we'll leave." "You got a warrant?" "No warrant." I'm like, "All right, well, come back with a warrant." And so they go, "Well, you know, this will be a lot easier if you just cooperate now. Right? There is no warrant. There's no legal proceeding. We just want to make sure you got them. You know, sometimes people sell them to other people. They purchase to just give to somebody else." He's like, if we can just see him, just let us see him. It'll be a lot easier. No, sir. No, sir. Always say no.
Give me a block and I'll machine that for you.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing with some of the 3D printers. Like you can buy, like his, it's like Ghost Guns is the name of the company or the account or whatever. But he sells like the plans for the 3D printers and all that, so you can make it, you know, out of plastic, or you can carve it out with metal.
That's like 4 setups right there.
Okay.
And a CNC machine.
Yeah.
I could flip that 4 times and get you that.
I believe it.
Like, yeah.
All right. So, Firearms Policy Coalition says they're delighted the Supreme Court will hear our case and decide this important issue once and for all. The Fifth Circuit decisions in our case was correct, and now that victory can be applied to the entire country. The Fifth Circuit sided with firearm owners and manufacturers who challenged the rule in November, finding it flouts clear statutory text and exceeds the legislatively imposed limits of agency authority in the name of public policy. So basically, they're saying, like, you're allowed to make rules and tweaks to things in your whole administrative authorization, but you've basically made a brand new law here, and you can't make a new law in addition to it, like, violating other statutes that already exist. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar argued in a court filing that the lower court's ruling would result in a flood of untraceable ghost guns into our nation's communities, endangering the public and thwarting law enforcement efforts to solve violent crimes. Under the Fifth Circuit's interpretation, anyone could buy a kit online and assemble a fully functioning gun in minutes. No background check, records, or serial numbers required.
Huh?
Just buying parts.
There's a
and putting it
purchase
together.
record.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're buying it online. Come on.
There's a record. And the thing is, too, is like,
You're not getting a whole, like, the kit isn't a whole gun. You have to buy separate kits, right?
well, there's kits. You can buy kits that have almost everything, but it's almost everything. I forget what they don't involve. Some of them, I think there's a limit to what they can give you with.
All at once?
Yeah, because if they give you like all the pieces all at once, then it's a gun that's just disassembled. But I think if you leave out certain things,
Yeah.
and it's not a gun, because with that alone, it's not a gun. You got to buy other pieces. But like you said, there's record. I mean, people are buying these things online, and out of all the crimes, like ghost guns are almost never used in a crime, like a quote unquote ghost gun, like a gun that someone assembled from buying the parts has been used in almost zero crimes. I think if you get to statistically zero crimes. Like, sure, there are some that occurred, but like once you're approaching 0%, approaching 0%, and so it's not a problem. People that commit crimes are buying stolen guns off of people on the street, or they steal guns out of people's cars and homes
Because it's easier.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're criminals, and they hang out with criminals. And they do criminal shit. So, if they were able to steal a gun, they hide it until they can use it to do other criminal stuff. If they want to step up their criminal game, or they just happen to run into someone who's trying to dump some stolen guns, maybe they get one. Maybe it's cheap. Maybe they grab a revolver. Maybe they grab whatever it is, If they're, really want to be gangsters, with their, I don't know, slinging rocks or whatever they do these days. Maybe they get a Tech 9 or something. But it's all like stolen, illegal sales. That's where guns come from. Or, with certain murder trials and things like that, it's just your own gun that you bought legally, but then, I don't know, you lost your damn mind, you killed your boss or something. But anyway, ghost guns are just not a problem that needs solving. And lower courts keep saying, yeah, this rule is BS. And, of course, the prosecution or the whatever, the government keeps going, no. We want to ask somebody else because this isn't right. Like, all the judges keep agreeing with them, but we think they should agree with us. So let's try it again. So it's going to get up to the Supreme Court. It was, the Daily Caller wrote that article. So it's just, that's a little bit of, some new laws that came through to offer kind of indirect. They keep trying to nibble gun control on us. There was the bump stock ban, which I've never shot a bump stock in my life. You can technically still kind of have, using your belt loop, you can kind of do a bump stock thing whenever you want to. But for an actual piece, so you don't have to use your belt loop. Those were made illegal because of the Vegas shooting. Donald Trump signed it. It was gun control legislation signed by Donald Trump, and the Republicans cheered it along. And it's stupid. That was just a part. Yeah, it can make you be able to shoot faster. But I mean, it's just like pulling the trigger just makes it set quicker. I don't like bump stocks. I don't care about bump stocks, but you know, you can't just make them illegal because they they make things sound scary. Like it doesn't affect how lethal a gun is. It doesn't. I mean, I'm willing to bet. I don't know. Anyway, it can help you shoot faster, but like even people that shoot like in the military, like you shoot short bursts. You know, if you just hold that, you know, yeah, the gun goes off. You're not aiming, so you know, or just single shot. You know, but like the bursts are the way to go for that purpose. So you know the bump stock, it's like you know pulling the trigger real fast. It's like you're not going to be aiming at well after that first. It's stupid. And then this ghost gun thing where people are like, hey man, 3D printers, you can like make your own gun parts. That's pretty cool. And now they want to put that toothpaste back in the tube, and it just ain't happening. Like I want to get, I think the 3D printers that work in metal, they're just like little mini CNCs, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just all about initially like when 3D printing metal first started, I just wanted to get a test piece, and it's just using bronze and metal and combining it. But I think it's gotten a lot, you know, the metal that you want it out of is more pure because they've refined the 3D printing process because it's much different than plastic.
Do you have one?
No, I don't. No, I ordered it online. I designed something, sent them to design. They sent me the part.
Yeah.
It was cool.
That's there's this guy, Austin Peterson, and he was running for the presidential nominee of the Libertarian Party back when Gary Johnson and Bill Weld ended up getting it in the Trump-Hillary election, and which is unfortunate. I think he would have gotten more votes than Gary Johnson. But he's an interesting guy. He's outside of Kansas City, about our age, and he does a little liberty podcast. He might even be on the radio out there too. I don't know. Anyway. But at some point, he got a 3D printer or two, and so now he's got a fun shop where he makes things like killdozers, and he carves out a quarter so it looks like George Washington smoking a blunt or a joint or whatever, you know, and it's a necklace or what have you. But there's all sorts of fun little things, and maybe even more jealous where, I don't know, he does like, I think like Buddhas, but with Jefferson and Washington and stuff. I don't know. But he makes fun things, and I'm jealous of that. In addition to making guns, you can make really fun things. So I keep thinking, like, I want one so bad. Then I worry about it staying parked and not being used. And me just going, I don't have enough time for this. All right. So let me see. What else has our people been up to? Oh, yeah. So from the Blaze, we have more funding bills. So the Senate overwhelmingly passes package containing Ukraine aid and more. In a 79-18 vote, which translates to almost everyone, the U.S. Senate voted to pass a package that included Ukraine aid, Israel aid, and also Thailand, or Taiwan aid in here, just to mention it, and other items. Ever-expanding national debt is over $34 trillion. And we're just going to keep spending more. 2 Democrats, independent Bernie Sanders, and 15 Republicans voted against the package. And so, you know, those are the names. Rick Scott from Florida, Marco Rubio, so both our senators opposed it. There's Hawley and Cruz and Blackburn. I don't know all these names. But, you know, that's it. Fewer than 20. Fewer than 20% of the people voted against funding all this stuff. Old Chucky Schumer said it's one of the most consequential messages Congress has passed in years to protect America's security and the future of democracy by funding Ukraine and Taiwan and Israel. That's
you'd think after like saying a bunch of bullshit for that many years that you'd stop believing yourself.
I have wondered how they continue saying these things with such conviction, because like I don't know if it's just how literal I am or something, but it's really hard to say, because you know, just to say something like just all hyperbolic, you know, when you know there's a couple caveats in there. Like, that's difficult enough. It's like, it is like this. I mean, technically like this sometimes. You know, like, that's hard enough, but you just say these... Like, funding Ukraine and Taiwan and Israel, probably Gaza too, that helps preserve democracy. Let's see. Our democracy or Ukraine's democracy. But didn't we help overthrow their democratically elected leader? Huh. That's interesting. Didn't we recently try to get Israel's democratically elected prime minister to step down and try to get them to push old Bibi out of office? That's interesting. It's like, so what democracy are we preserving in this? So old Mike Lee from Utah said, they think they're Churchill. They're congratulating themselves for spending money that doesn't belong to them. Money we don't have and we'll have to borrow and print. Spending other people's money to fight someone else's war against their will isn't heroic, it's cowardice. It doesn't end well for any political party whose elected officials repeatedly display their contempt for the party's most faithful voters. And then Lee says, Dems don't do this to their base. Dems fight for their base. Basically, he's hating on all the Republicans that jumped on to sign it. Yeah, so it went through without any border funding. That was a big thing. You know, Republicans honestly don't care about funding Ukraine. They'll do it all day, but they need to get their little wins in there. But let's see. Let me get my bar back here. I kind of want to get one of these little pedal doohickeys where I can like do stuff like that. Let me see where I went. Yeah, real quick, I want to show this video after. Hang on one second. Hold on. Let me get it all. You pause. You go big. That's all right. So after they passed the funding, look, these are our. No, this is our Congress. Look at our Congress. Just wait. That's a pledge. They're all waving those. Are those American flags, Charlie?
No.
What flags are those?
That looks like Ukraine's flag.
So our Congress is flying another country's flag?
I don't see one American flag. Oh, there it is. There's the American flag back there. I see it.
It's hard to take that one down. Look at all these people. They're cheering for democracy. Democracy. Which country do they represent? Could you imagine how the world would freak out if they were waving Israel's flags? Like, you know, there's always the thing like, oh well, the government's owned by Israel. You know, like if you're a supporter of Israel, it's like, they own you. You're a representative of Israel, not America. And it's like, so you know, that's kind of a thing that people have been saying for a while to try and discourage support of Israel, like before all this stuff happened. But man, conspiracies would be rampant if like this many people were waving Israeli flags. But like Ukrainian flags, they don't even see a problem with it. Like, woo! And then Thomas Massey filmed this, or he got the video. I don't even think he videoed it. He just tweeted it. And they said they're going to fine him $500 because it's illegal to do from the floor. So here's Massey. He said, instead of fining Democrats for waving flags, the House Sergeant at Arms just called and said I'd be fined $500 if I don't delete this video post. Mike Johnson really wants to memory hole this betrayal of America. And so Elon Musk said, you can be fined for posting a video? And so Massey says, there's nothing that gives authority to demand I remove a video from my congressional account. But they are. There's a fine in the rules for taking pictures videos on the House floor, but they don't know if I tape this, and Democrats post from the floor frequently. Example attached. You know, right there. Look at that guy with his Ukrainian flag. I believe to be fined, they have to serve you notice on the floor while it's happening. That's how I was fined for not wearing a mask. Seems a bit creepy that the Sergeant at Arms would be on my X account 3 days later looking for an infraction. How would deleting video undo my alleged infraction of filming on the House floor? It wouldn't. The Uniparty is big mad at me for exposing them on several votes for asking the Speaker to resign. The Speaker, his staff, or one of his allies in our conference probably is directing the Sergeant at Arms to do this. and they dropped it. Speaker Mike Johnson said later on Tuesday that he would reverse the Sergeant-at-Arms decision and there will be no fines imposed on Massey. So I think that shows some priorities. What is a victory? A victory is Ukraine funding. Do you think that what do you think their motivation is for Ukraine? What's their Ukraine love? I mean, do you think these people are really like, we have to stop Russia and it's going to make a glorious Ukraine and all the Ukrainians are going to be happy?
No, because it's never been with the past countries we've done the same thing for.
It is interesting. It's like, so this nation was like hugely corrupt and now we just keep pouring money into it. And like, what do we gain?
I mean, to me, there's multiple benefits for the people that are supporting this. I mean, obviously, I think the money is making a U-turn back into their accounts at some point.
Yeah.
A distraction piece as well. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think there's the neocons, like, the Romney, Ben Shapiro type cats that are just like, this money allows us to fight Russia over there so that we don't have to fight them over here. And so isn't it better to like kill Russian troops and hurt them financially and militarily without having to get involved personally with our own troops and our own money? We go, well, I mean, if those are the only two options, I guess I see your point to a degree. But it's like, was Putin talking about invading America? And it's like, well, no. Oh. It's like, was he talking about taking over Europe? Like, no. It's like, oh. But he put like all his troops for a mass invasion into Ukraine to like just keep going so that all his forces are ready to go. Like, well, no, I mean, he put a kind of moderate size and he sends more, but it's kind of a moderate size just over kind of a border dispute over this area. You go, all right.
Well, and he doesn't need to be in the U.S. to fight the U.S. Like ICBMs, like
it's always about bowel movements with each other.
I'm just like, this isn't like warfare from the Civil War, guys, where they're gonna take months to come over to our country and then be on our land.
Yeah,
they're just gonna go boop,
and like it's sure
maybe,
and just to be this concerned about it, like I don't know. They took land before. We didn't seem too concerned about it. But this one, all of a sudden, it's like this one, now that we put our puppet in, or this other democratically elected president got in, like now we care. And like BlackRock's over there meeting, talking about investing to rebuild the nation. And that probably has nothing to do with anything because it's not like the largest investment bank in the world has anybody in their back pocket. That couldn't be. They couldn't be bribing.
It's ludicrous to think that.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought Ludacris was going to show up.
What it's like, we also poked Putin. I mean, so what did we expect from him?
Well, it's like they have said out loud to anybody that will listen for years not to put NATO in Ukraine. It's the brightest of red lines. The brightest of red lines. The different political... It would be like like all of the Democrats and all the Republicans agreeing on something, that wasn't just about making them rich, where it's like, okay, no. Like, we don't want to do this, but we agree. Like, if you set up in Mexico City, like, that's a problem and we're going to probably whoop you, And so that's how it is in Russia. Like opposition to Putin loyalist, it doesn't matter. They're all saying like that is the brightest of red line. Because do they want a U.S. missile system, a defensive missile system on the largest border that they have? Hitler made use of that border and killed a lot of Ruskies, a lot of them. They don't really want that to happen again. So anyway, I don't know. I just can't imagine. I think some of it might just be polls. They go, okay, like supporting Ukraine is something that the Democrats want or that my base wants or something. So I'll wave the flag and just be part of it. But I don't know. I think, like you said, I think some of that money's U-turning. I think it's taking some ways to get to different accounts. But I mean, hell, we sent, what was it, $100 billion?
Is that washing money?
Well, listen, we don't like to use terms like that here. But I mean, like when it was Hunter Biden and Burisma, and like that whole thing was going on, we sent a huge chunk. Was it $100 billion or $1 billion? I don't know. It was a big chunk of money that we sent over that was supposed to go towards, humanitarian efforts or whatever. And it went into the National Bank.
I think you're right on the figure.
Yeah, and then it just left, and then it kind of disappeared. And like no one can find it. It was our money. We sent it to them to like help with stuff, and they're just like, went away. I was like, where'd it go? It's like, I don't know, but I bet you the Bidens got a good vacation out of it.
It's almost like this is totally random, but the student loans, like my wife's student loan got paid off. Dude, there's no record of it.
Did it get paid off?
It's gone. Oh. It's not just paid off, it's gone.
I wonder.
Like, we can't look up the history of the loans.
Did it like just recently for this last thing?
Oh. Not the recent one, the first time around.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
And it didn't jump back when they said that was unconstitutional?
It's gone.
That's interesting.
Huh. And she went to call to ask, and they're like, they literally said Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took care of it. That's all they said on the phone. And like, we can't look it up.
That's wild.
Like, to see like a paid off designation, it's just gone.
Huh. I mean, good for her, but
it's so weird.
It's weird too, because I was wondering how that works. Because I saw people on the internet being like, "Oh, this happened. Oh, this happened," and then you go, "Okay." Then it's like, "Hey, pause. It's all unconstitutional." So then it's like, I was wondering, like, do people suddenly get the loans? Do they? Hey, you owe this again. Like, how does that work? And I guess not. I guess they just deleted some, and I guess people just eat it. I don't know. It's such a weird.
Yeah, I know when the administration got pushback for trying, he was talking about the workaround that they did to, if you had paid 120 payments consecutively, you were able to get it.
Well, that was like this time around. He said, like, if you've had it for this, and there's some stuff where you go, okay, fine. We're going to eliminate the interest payments. And it's like, all right, when you have predatory loans with predatory interest rates and that you don't allow to disappear through bankruptcy and all this stuff, like you're selling a horrible scam product. So like, yeah, you want to say, all right, forget the interest. I think you can do that as the lender, as the predatory lender that's taking advantage of people, the United States. But I'm torn on it because like you don't have like, you get a loan out, you pay your loan. Like I shouldn't have to pay for someone's loan, or if someone paid off their own loan, they shouldn't have to pay for someone else's loan, and like, what about the people who did spend, a long time paying off and then other people, it just goes, it's gone. Like it's not fair. But the problem is the loan system is so corrupt that it's like, part of me is just, I don't know. Part of me just goes, maybe it is okay because the government's involvement in these loans have made them these horrific monsters that have really negatively affected people. And it's a government program. And so if you just end the government program, I don't know. I mean, I think they'd have to like actually end government bank loans for education. They need to get back to like, because that's the thing, like a real bank. If you're like, hey man, I'm pre-med, I want to be a doctor. They go, yeah, you'll be able to pay this loan. But if you go, I don't know, still kind of searching for myself. I just kind of want to go to college. I think join a fraternity and just kind of see where I go. And they go, oh, do you have connections to a fraternity? Those good connections for business? No, I don't know. I just figure myself out. They're gonna be like, well, why don't you figure yourself out at junior college? Like they're just not going to give you that loan, but it's good because then you won't have that debt. Figure out what you want to do. But that wasn't all that was in this bill. Where were we at time-wise?
58.
Okay, cool. That was not all that was in this thing. The brilliant strategists that are the Republicans, they say, oh yeah, this bill that's going to go through for Ukraine. I bet you that thing's just going to soar right through. We'll put a poison pill in it. This will be good. Yeah. So they put the TikTok ban in there. So in addition to sending all this money to 3 different nations at least, TikTok ban. So the Senate followed through with congressional plans to force the sale of TikTok on Tuesday, despite vows from its Chinese owners that it will fight the legislation in court. The measure, tucked into a $95 billion package on foreign aid that passed the upper chamber at 79-18, heading to Biden's to sign. The House originally passed a bill which requires ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, to divest or else face nationwide ban in March. Anyway, they ended up extending the time period they have to sell it to essentially be 1 year. There's a grace period and all that kind of stuff. So it's just like, all right, I got a year to figure out how to sell TikTok, ByteDance. And it wants people over. But the interesting thing about it is if it forces the sale, but in the original TikTok ban legislation, which, I was also opposed to, they had a law that was part of it, which would make it illegal to sell American user data to China. And, how enforceable is that?
Right.
Probably not very much. It'd be very difficult, but it'd be something, where you go, okay, like, TikTok has to be owned by Americans and you can't sell information to China. So they got rid of that part. So now it's just TikTok has to be sold away from the Chinese. But it's not a crime to sell American user data to China. So,
So it's pointless.
What's the point? Yeah. 'Cause it's like, all right, whatever. Like, Meta buys it. And they go, well, we're going to keep selling that information to China. It's lucrative. So yeah, I think it's kind of stupid. This is nothing important really. Just China's gonna probably respond. This does mention so Israel got 26 billion, Ukraine got 60 billion, and Taiwan got 8 billion. So like in this bill, China should love it. We gave $8 billion to Taiwan. Not exactly something that Chinese will be happy about. And then we also said, China, you can't own TikTok anymore. And so they're gonna fight it. But now they're kind of messing around. Let's see, what did China do the other day? They took. All right. China's government on Friday ordered that the Meta-owned WhatsApp and Threads be pulled from Apple's App Store over national security concerns, of course. So the Chinese government had found content on WhatsApp and Threads about China's president, Xi Jinping, that was inflammatory and violated the country's cybersecurity laws. So basically, they're doing the same thing. And Russia's talking about doing it too, where it's just like, you know what? National security. You can't have Facebook. You can't have YouTube. So like, retaliation is coming, basically. Our government does not think about things at all. They pass laws on a whim, like without even considering consequences. And like, listen, I don't care. Like, China goes, okay, you can't have Facebook in China. Like, I don't really care about that. Like, you make whatever decisions you want. But it's going to affect Facebook, an American company. So that should be at least considered. Though, in the long run, you go, I think overall it's good. So doing business in China is just not important. Okay. But it's, we don't think about any consequences ever. Like, it's just not a concern of ours.
Just kick over the domino.
Yeah. Well, what's on the other side of the domino? Come on. We don't want to ruin surprises. Let's see. Real quick to wrap up. We were talking a little bit about how Joe Biden has presented his fiscal year 2025 budget. As everyone knows, Joe Biden is a world-class economist. He graduated top of his class from the finest School of Economics in the land. He's regularly sought out for his brilliance and his knowledge on all matters.
Sorry. I was trying to keep a straight face.
Yeah, he doesn't know anything. He likes oatmeal. That's what he knows. But oatmeal he does love. All right. So, part of the budget proposal, and real quick, like presidents submit budget proposals, they are accepted around 0% of the time. Like, that Congress sets a budget. President presents one, normally Congress goes, that's cute. If you have like a super majority, maybe they follow it a little bit, but a lot of times it's like, that's cute, you did your job, we're going to do it, and nothing ever comes of it, So like when George W. Bush got reelected, I think his original budget had privatizing Social Security in it, and nobody wanted it, and being George W. Bush, he didn't put up a fight about it. He was just like, well, I ran on it and I tried, but that's just that, I guess. And so, it kind of went away. Anyway, the Biden administration is trying to raise an additional $4.3 trillion over 10 years in the worst way possible, imposing a minimum tax equal to 25% of a taxpayer's taxable income and unrealized capital gains, less the sum of their regular tax for taxpayers with wealth over $100 million. This is QTR's Fringe Finance is the source here. Quoth the Raven. So, Charlie, Mr. Finance Man, what does that mean, taxing unrealized capital gains?
Wait, for taxpayers with wealth over $100 million. Huh. I've been reading it's just $1 million.
That's a different. They raised normal capital gains. Let me see if that's
the 44.6%.
Yeah, so the 44.6% is people that have 1 million income and over 250,000 in investments, I think. And so they're going to raise capital gains on them to whatever it was, 45% or something. The highest ever.
Yeah, since 1920s, I think is what it was.
Great.
Which was a great time in America.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when Coolidge came in and got all the tax rates down, it became good. But before that, yeah, things were not ideal. But yeah, so tell the people what an unrealized capital gain is.
Well, I mean, if you're sitting in any sort of investment and it has appreciated, whether you have exercised and sold that position, that's unrealized gain. So you actually haven't realized it. It's just sitting there in positive form.
Right. You buy a stock at $100. It's currently trading at $150, and you go, that's cool. It's gone up in value. But you haven't sold it yet. You don't have that $50. You just have a stock. Tomorrow it could drop down to 75, and you will be like, oh, that sucks. I'm looking at a lower value now. So yeah, this says if on that $50 gain, you got a quarter of it, the gain that you don't have, the gain that's on paper. And that's a question too. When?
Right. I was trying to talk with my dad about this. I'm like, how do you regulate this? Like, when do we look at it?
Yeah. Tax day? Or is it
end of year?
Average?
Yeah.
The average for the year? Probably something like that. They go, all right, you've owned it all year. What's, I mean, you would think,
yeah,
fair. You would go beginning of the year, last day of the year. I guess, what's that difference? But that's the other thing. I don't think you're going to be able to write down unrealized losses.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, like if at one point you're up 100% on your investment, but by the end of the year you're not, are we going back to the 100%?
Right.
I don't think we should.
I mean, we should, yeah.
But when is the cutoff? Yeah. What if I plan to hold it for 10 years?
That's the fun thing about these things is they don't actually have to come up with a plan. They just they write it up generally like that's the plan. They'll figure it out later. The easiest would be obviously day 1 versus day 365. Like, what's the difference on those? Not saying that would be legal or justifiable or make any sense, but that would be the one that would be the least crooked of crooked ideas.
Well, that would be short. That would be short term. 366 days makes it long term.
Yeah, well, they don't care about all that. These are unrealized. It's no term, no term.
Yeah, they really need to. I mean, would not need to do this, but
yeah. And I saw on old Twitter we were like, or maybe it was Instagram or something, but people were talking about what a bad idea it is. You're like, oh, seems like we got a lot of 100 millionaires around here. Like, what are y'all complaining about? It's not even going to affect you. And it's such a simplistic, stupid way to look at things. Because it's like, okay, yes, I don't have $100 million. Yes, I don't have, this will not affect my investments specifically. But you're setting up a precedent where you can tax dollars that you have not received. You're taxing assets for their existence, their value today, which we do with property anyway, which is horrible. But it's like, we're taxing where you stand today, not where you cash out. And when the income tax was introduced, it was like, hey, we got a war to fund. We need to do income taxes, guys. And I did the whole time value of money. They said it will only be people making, it was basically the equivalent of only making over $650,000 in today's money. And so, I forget, like $2,000 or whatever it was, inflation's a bear. But, everyone's like, oh, only rich people? All right. So it was like, it was like 1% if you were at like 600 something thousand equivalent. And then there's like a 2% and a 3%. And they're like, but that's it.
And it was supposed to be temporary, wasn't it?
Yeah, just to get through World War One. I think World War One ended. But yeah, then they go, you know what? We should tax more people. And then they started like, man, this is great. We should tax higher. And then like tax rates have been crazy. People, you look at top tax rates of 70%, and what happens when you tax the hell out of all the producers in the economy?
Stop producing.
Yeah. It's like when you provide money for something, you get more of that thing. When you tax something, you get less of that thing. When you tax productivity and success, you get less productivity and less success. So with this, if you were, okay, so let's talk about it in 100 millionaire billionaireville, right? We're all Elon Musk and we're all, the Oracle of Omaha. What's that? Buffett. Okay. All right. So we buy Twitter. Okay. We buy Twitter. We pay whatever. We pay $50 million for it. Okay. As an investment, we bought shares of Twitter. We own all these shares of Twitter, and it goes up in value because you're doing a good job running it, which is clearly not the case for Twitter right now. But whatever. But let's just say, so you're investing in this company. Let's say you don't even buy the whole thing. That might make it too complicated. But you like to invest in American companies. You bought a 20% stake in this one, 10% over there, 10% over there, 10% over there, and you take a look at how they're being run, and you make sure from the perspective of the board, you get a good CEO that runs things well. People like the products. Yada 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 yada. All right. So now it's doing better as a business. You're like, well, this is great. Maybe they pay out some dividends, maybe they don't, whatever. If the government comes in and goes, all right, you've invested, $100 million between these 5 companies. Looks like they've done well. It's worth $200 million. So, that difference you owe us $25 million. And you go, what do I owe you? Like, I haven't made any money off of this. Like, they're doing well, but I haven't drawn or maybe I draw a salary from the board, but like, why would I owe you $25 million? And they go, sorry, that's just the rules. Like, if that's the case, these rich people are not going to support a company and go, I'm going to try and fund that, $10 million into this company to get it going. They're going to say, I'm going to buy a vault of gold, whatever it is. I'm going to buy land, but even land. I mean, land they'll tax you too. Cause they've been doing that to farmers. Farmers, when a family farm dies, and typically with a family farm, there's been like some Monsanto type of giant outfit that's in the neighborhood already, that's already offered, your grandpa money over and over again to sell his farm. I like my farm the way it is. And so he didn't sell it. Eventually he kicks the bucket, and he's not a lawyer. He's just a farm guy. And he said, I'm going to leave it to my kids or my grandkids or whatever. You know, my grandson's been helping farm this land. He really knows what he's doing. I'm going to leave it to him and let it go. So in his will, Jebediah, leave it to old Ezekiel over there. And so then just normal death tax, they go, well, you know, we value this farm. You know, this is good land here. It's a lot of acres. This is probably $100 million right here. So death tax, about 30% of that. So just $30 million and, you know, you have a nice day. And of course, old Ezekiel's sitting there thinking like, I work on a farm for my grandpa. I don't have $30 million. This farm hasn't generated $30 million any 30 years it's existed, you know? And they go, well, just sell the farm for $100 million and then give us 30 and then you'll be rich. No big deal. And so, you know, they don't get the 100 mil, but they get whatever they get, but they're forced to sell the family farm in order to pay the tax man. And like, yeah, they walk away with some cheddar in their pocket that they'll also pay tax on. But you know, they lose this thing that they've had, that their families had for generations, that they want to own. They just want to continue owning it. Not even they want to buy. Their families owned it. They want the family to continue to own it. But simply because the owner died before giving it to you, the government gets a share for a third of it. Now, these farms, if you can go hit them up before that, where it's just like, hey, my designer, her grandfather has a farm in New York State, and you know, it seems like a nice farm. They would work summers as a veggie stand. They set up a veggie stand, and they had things that were grown at the farm, you know, whatever. Everybody that works for me is much younger than me. Her grandfather is the age of my father, so that's interesting. My grandfather just turned this age. I'm like, that's my dad's age. Anyway, but you know, I started complaining to her because she was talking about just family stuff, you know. So she's got a cousin that works the farm, you know, and he seems to be really, he's got or he wants to work the farm. He works the farm. He enjoys it. It seems like his sort of thing. And she's got like an uncle or something that doesn't really have a thing and probably wants, you know, would love a stack of cash, you know, but that, you know, obviously her grandparents are trying to plan. And I was just like, y'all need a plan like now. I was like, form an LLC, you know, just whatever. Like form an LLC, put them in there, just start gifting shares or whatever,
yep.
You know, but just like, don't let these people die without a plan in place. Or it was like, are you going to lose that thing? Mm-hmm. You know, and it's like, I don't have anything to gain off of this. But it's just like, I just hate that idea where you can just lose something because of some tax scheme, you know? And like the unrealized capital gains, it'll be land, you know, it'll be your house. Like right now, yeah, 100 millionaires. Okay, cool. But if it sticks and it works, they go, well, we're going to have to open that up a little bit to, you know, 50, the tens of millions in there. Then you go, well, just 10 million up, 1 million up. All right, 500 grand and up. And then suddenly, like, you know, you sit there, say when it's $1 million up, maybe they don't go south of that. You go, well, you know, $1 million and what is it? Wealth. That's the thing. Wealth of $100 million. How's that defined, you know? So, like, we hit another real estate bubble, and suddenly this house, because of inflation, your house isn't really worth more as much as the dollar's worth less. But inflation does its thing. There's a bubble. Suddenly, this house is $1 million or $900, you know, 900,000, whatever. But it's close enough that plus like my 401k and my wages, where they go, man, it looks like $1 million in there. It looks like, well, your house, you got that for a pretty good deal. It's now worth about $1 million. It's like, yeah, it's like, I'm happy about that. It's like, cool. Just need a couple 100,000 and you can stay in it. I'm like, oh, I don't have a couple. Oh, just sell the house, give us the money, call it a day. Like, it's going to trickle down like that. And like the grossest thing, like capital gains taxes are already gross. Like, you know, one thing that George W. Bush did that was good was he got rid of the triple taxation on them, you know, but still, like, you get paid from your job and you pay income tax. So the government steals a big chunk of your money because they deserve your money because it's actually their money. So they steal your money and they let you keep whatever that's left. And you go, Well, I see inflation rates are up like this. I see savings rates are down like that. Putting money in a savings account would be like burying it in the backyard. It's just not going to do anything for me. Why don't I holler at Bean Financial and get some a nice little portfolio? And so Bean Financial goes, all right, sounds good. Get you in here. It's like, oh, you're selling some? All right, so you take your money that's already taxed and you buy your stocks. And then you sell some of those stocks. You know, they go up, you sell, you buy, you know, all that kind of thing. But they go, well, you made money on your investments, so you got to pay taxes on that. You go, but I pay taxes on the money when I got it. So like it used to be worth, $15. Boy, I only got 10 out of that 15. So I spent the 10 on the stock. And then now that 10's worth 15 again. So I'm pretty happy about that. You go, yeah. But it's worth 10 again. You know, it's like, oh, seemed like a good investment. It's like it was a great investment. We just need to wet a beak.
Thank you for your great investment.
Everybody will be fine. Just let us wet our beak. It'll be fine. Shame for something to happen to such a nice house. So yeah, there's more disasters in this bill, including like the IRS has asked for $100 billion, $104 billion, because they need more money to do IRS things, which like, let me see real quick. Like the last time they asked was like 80 billion, and that was still, let me see where it is.
That's when they wanted 10,000 more agents or whatever it was.
Oh, I thought this article. I was going to try and find it real quick. But either way, that is nowhere near what is required to run the IRS, to pay the agents that they have, pay the bills, pay all the stuff. Like that, it takes a very, here it is. 12.3 billion is the annual budget to like run the agency. That's like normal operations, which is already huge. $12 billion the IRS? And they go, but we need another 92 billion on top of that. And it's like, oh.
I think what was the figure? 30% of the employees that work for the IRS don't file.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So it's like, what?
Yeah, they're committing tax fraud. But they're like, who's going to catch me? Me? Yeah, so like, so the 104 billion. All right, so remember that it takes 12 billion to run the agency. Okay, during the Inflation Reduction Act to reduce inflation.
It's so hard to keep a straight face for this.
So they got 80 billion during that. That was to hire the people. So it's 12 billion was their operating. They got 80 billion, whenever that was, a year or two ago. Now they need another 104 billion because America.
And the Pentagon keeps failing audits, so I'm just a little confused as to what's going on.
Yeah, money just doesn't, like the rounding errors are ridiculous. I tried to put up the article that was talking about the capital gains, the unrealized capital gains tax. Originally, I was like, you know what, I'm going to grab, because when I search for it, like the first things that pop up are the official White House pages, And so I was like, well, I'll just pull this up and maybe we'll go over that. I'm sure it'll be funny. But it was just so much BS. But it starts off with all the things you'd expect, like, we have done these great things with unemployment, and like we've reduced the deficit by 1.7 trillion since coming into office, and we've, all these like kind of lying with numbers. Like we've reduced inflation by a substantial percent. It's like inflation has been so high that even if this month's inflation number is 1%, still 1% above what it was this time last year, which was like 9% above that, which was, 4% above that. Like we are not sticking to our 2% Federal Reserve thing that they can magically do by manipulating our currency so well. But anyway, it was just all that sort of fluff, so I couldn't even get through it to like find what he wanted to talk about because he's just lying with numbers. Well, I think the important thing to remember is our government loves us, Charlie, and they just do things to help us be happy and safe. And we need to worship our dark lords in D.C. If not, who will be there for us to hold our hands when we get old? Take care of us. Nuzzle us in their bosom. The government. That's who nuzzles bosoms. All right. Well, follow us on all the things. Go to that Give Send Go for old Dexter. But yeah, follow, tell your friends, do some sharing. We're doing clips now. Share the clips. They're shorter. It's easier. Watch them. Love them. Love us. LoadedTalk.com has all the stuff. All right, Charlie, until next week.
I have nothing else great.
Love us, people. Love us.